So I'm originally from Middleton in County Cork, East Cork. I studied civil engineering in UCC and became a civil engineer, worked with a lot of the big builders, Hegarty's, Sisks and Murphy's in the UK and what have you. And then went out on my own in 2004 to start house building. Yeah, I mean, look, it was kind of the boom was running along, but it wasn't crazy at that stage. So I was doing extensions, renovations, and whatever. And then as time wore on, I started building one-off houses, and then I suppose I didn't like I thought the customer service end was very light. That people who were building a house, they were poorly served because they were caught between the architect and the engineer and the QS and the builder and everything else. So I came up with this idea of design and build, which isn't a new idea in itself, but I mean to make a kind of a bespoke design and build company where you could come to one company and that company would design your house and build your house, fixed price, and give you a nice, straightforward and fairly stress-free journey to your dream home at the end of the day. Well, I suppose it's funny because like when COVID happened, when the first lockdown happened, everyone thought the property market was going to crash, and people were even lowering their bids for houses, thinking that people would still sell them to them at that level and everything else. And then when the lockdown ended last year, the first lockdown, the property market kind of trundled on, and then it kind of gained a bit of speed, and then it really got going. And
increased in value, yeah.
And then, of course, we had the lockdown this year. But I suppose one thing that has changed is now that with COVID and everything else, a lot of people are beginning to move out of big cities into smaller cities, or from smaller cities into smaller towns. So people are moving away from major urban centres. I suppose quality of life, staycations. I know that the summer house market has gone wild. And people are just, I suppose, concerned with living in cities with loads of people and proximity and all that kind of thing. Maybe things like air quality and whatever. So the market is still really buoyant, too buoyant really. And property prices. Well, property prices are too strong. I mean, property prices are going up a huge amount on a monthly basis. And you would expect that, with all the money we've borrowed and everything else, that things would look different, but they don't. So it's a difficult time for home buyers, really, I suppose, really. I suppose there's a few things feeding into it. I mean, if you're really looking to save money, is it cheaper to do it yourself? In some respects, yes. No, you're paying different VAT rates. Like if you're getting a plumber in to do some plumbing work, he's charging you 13.5% VAT. If you're buying timber and you're going to get another carpenter with the timber up on the roof, you're buying that timber at 23%. Now, if you're getting it all through a builder, you're getting it all at 30.5% because he's supplying and fitting the whole building works. So he's charging everything at 30.5%. So you are paying a bit more VAT if you build it yourself, because you are paying material at 23%. So that's one thing. It really comes down to how much time you can give it and how much headspace you have to give it. I mean, if you're working in an office or you're working in a multinational company, you can't leave your office from one end of the day to the next. You won't be able to be on site, and if you're not on site, you are the project manager, you are the builder, you are the person who's ensuring the site. And what goes wrong? Like the plumber knows how to do his job, and the plasterer knows how to do his job, and the electrician knows how to do his job. But where the plumber and the electrician are meeting to tie in on hooking up a heating system, you need to be in the middle of all that, making sure that's all being coordinated. Then you need to get it commissioned by a third party, which is the people who are supplying the heating system itself, air to water now, for example. There's a lot of interface there, and that's where you're needed. That's where a foreman's needed in a building company, or the builder with a smaller company. You're needed for all those interfaces. You're needed for all the junctions. So it really comes down to how much time you have to give that project. Now, if you are someone who's in the trade, I'd say that very few people in the trade who use builders, because they can do some of the work themselves, they have friends and they can bring in and get good prices from them, and they have the time to give. They might be there every afternoon because they're doing something else in the morning, or if you're in the farming community and the houses you're building on your own land, sure, you'll be coming and going the whole time and again, so it works very well. But again, if you don't have the time
I suppose
to
it just depends on the lifestyle of the person living in the first place. And
it depends on how much, do you think you're going to add value to it by being there? I mean, if you haven't a clue about building and have little or no interest in it, you're not going to be adding much value. If you're fairly clued into that and you have a strong interest in it and you think you could drive good bargains and you can give it the time, then it could very well work for you. So you will save money by doing it yourself, but then I suppose depending on what your hourly rate is on your day job. I mean, if you're making big money on your day job and you're spending most of your time instead of billing out on your day job working on your building site, maybe it doesn't work for you at all. So it comes down to the person really, you know. I think if you can't get a builder on the phone, he's either too busy or he just doesn't answer his phone the best of times. And you just got to, I always picture myself, like we'd be appointing subcontractors. If I can't get a subcontractor on the phone, I won't use him, because the day when there's a problem is the day you need to get him on the phone. I mean, when things are going fine, you'll always get him on the phone. It's the day there's a problem. And that's the same as someone self-building, trying to get the builder on the phone. You know, that's always a concern. I suppose if you're going out for 3 or 4 prices and one seems really low, he's forgotten something, like, you know, because everyone's buying concrete in the same place. Everyone's buying their timber in 1 or 2 building yards. Everyone's using the same window company. They might even be using the same plumber, who knows, right? So, and most construction rates and prices are commodities at this stage, right? There's a rate for plastering that nearly everyone you know. So if someone's very low, they've either made a mistake or they're really quiet and fighting for work, and you'd wonder why. The cheapest site to build on is a flat site by the road, right? Now, it mightn't be the nicest site, it mightn't have the best views, but a flat site with no rock or clay, or there's no boggy area out near the road, is the cheapest site to build on. Now, if you have a sloped site, it costs a little bit more because you might have cut and fill. If it's very sloped, you might have retaining walls, which are very expensive. If there's rock on the site and you have to go in with a rock breaker at the end of your digger and take out all the rock before you can put down your foundations, that's thousands and thousands of euros, depending on the rock and quantity of rock and everything else.
And if people are looking at sites, how would they look at that, or how?
Talk to the farmer.
Okay. Yeah.
The farmer will know what's in the ground. So if you're buying it from a farmer, your dad's the farmer. Dad, look, what's the ground like here? I mean, we build on farmers' sons and daughter sites the whole time, and the father would come out to meet me and everything else, and I'd say, what's the ground like? And he'll tell you. I mean, even when and the other thing is, when you're doing the percolation test, go out when the digger's there digging the trial holes for the percolation test. You have to pay for it anyhow. Go out and meet the digger driver and go, what's the ground like? He'll tell you, right? He'll go over, just look, I'll drive over and I'll do a few more trial holes around the place and watch him, you know. He'll tell you, yeah, the ground's good, that's good building ground. This is really important stuff. Yeah. Planners' expectation, planning is becoming a little bit more onerous. Like, the planners are really, really busy. They're probably understaffed. A lot of projects are going to further information because I'd say planners are struggling to keep up with the pace of projects that are coming at them. Further information probably gives them a little bit more time to assess the project. So I'm seeing projects, you know, maybe 50% of projects go to further information, which delays it then by a few months. It's just like, first of all, like if you're building in Cork, there's a great document online, the Rural Development Guidelines, published by Cork County Council. Great document.
I think every county council has one of them.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
okay.
I've seen them for Roscommon where I am.
Yeah, they're great documents, and they have it. They have all the details of what they expect in terms of good housing design and good site design, site choice, and all that kind of thing. Read them, because I mean, and generally they're promoting good design anyway, so you'll learn from it. I would definitely use an architect, right? Because some people go, oh, I can save money by just using an engineer and he can do the percolation test and all that. That's money I wouldn't be saving, like, because if you have any kind of a half reasonable budget, an architect will design a better house than an engineer, right? So get the architect to design it, so you'll get the space right, because you only get one chance to do that. Architects are generally good at planning permissions too, because and planners like to see architects involved because they know that they've, generally speaking, they'll have put a bit of thought into the design and the orientation and the planning policy and all that. So if you can afford to, I would certainly use an architect, because you'll get a better design and hopefully you get an easier path through the planning process. As they say in construction, measure twice, cut once. Do your research. Don't rush into it. Like, speak to people who've done it. A lot of people who've done it say they wouldn't do it again as well, from a direct labour perspective, right? Because they find the whole thing so stressful. So do your research, and you know, cutting costs is important, but like when you start looking at cost per square foot, don't just remember the cheapest one you heard, because people typically do, right? And I'd be more for, if you have the budget, I'd be more for driving value than cutting cost, because at the end of the day, you're going to be living this, your family's going to be living in this house, you know. But do your research, and do your research before you make any decisions. So research what an architect does, what an engineer does, what a QS does, what a builder does, you know, and various different trades. And build up a good knowledge base. Talk to friends and family, Google, and like, do the research before you jump straight into it. People jump into it, they realise they've made loads of mistakes, and God, if I buy time back, I'd done things differently. Before you rush into it, spend a few months researching it, because that'll pay dividends. And again, okay, it's great to be researching online, but there's no substitute for talking to friends and family, work colleagues who've built, and learn from their mistakes, because you know that's all there to be done. So measure twice, cut once.